Today on RoxomTV News, I'm coming at you remotely, but today's top stories don't stop. As Trump says the Iran conflict may be winding down as he paused planned strikes for 5 days. And Iran responded by saying there are no talks at all, which is always a strong sign that everyone is definitely on the same page. Elon Musk has been found liable for manipulating Twitter stock with a tweet, which is interesting because for years it kind of felt like his tweets were the market. A routine landing turns into a deadly collision between a jet and a fire truck in New York. We'll tell you what went wrong. The Pentagon is now in court with an AI company that refused to hand over its tech, raising the question of whether national security now includes access to your algorithm. And Mark Zuckerberg is building an AI agent to help run Meta, which sounds great for efficiency and slightly less great if you're one of the 70,000 people whose job just became a beta test. I'm your host, Hank Hudson. Bitcoin is currently trading around $70,000, and that brings us to our top story of the morning. So let's get into it. Because this morning, President Trump is signaling that the conflict with Iran may be easing up, at least for now. He posted that the U.S. and Iran have had what he describes as a very good and productive conversations toward a complete and total resolution, and has ordered the Pentagon to pause strikes on Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for 5 days. Iran responded almost immediately, saying there have been no direct or indirect talks, and framing the move as the U.S. backing off after Tehran warned it could target Gulf energy infrastructure. So there are really two possibilities here. Either quiet negotiations are happening, or Trump's 48-hour ultimatum on Saturday to send out strikes got no compliance, and now he's walking it back. This signals how quickly the tone of a conflict can shift without a formal agreement, which matters because even small changes in posture can ripple into energy prices, global markets, and how close things are to either escalation or real de-escalation. Over in San Francisco, where AI companies usually battle for talent, not against the U.S. government, Anthropic is heading into court in a case that could set a major precedent for how tech and defense intersect. The company is asking a judge to block the Pentagon from labeling it as a supply chain risk, a designation typically reserved for foreign adversaries, not a domestic AI firm. Now, this came after Anthropic refused to allow unrestricted military use of its AI model, Claude, which led to the company being blacklisted from several federal contracts and government agencies being ordered to stop using its technology. Now, Microsoft and more than 20 retired military officials have filed in support of Anthropic, arguing the move looks less like national security and more like retaliation. Now, at its core, the case isn't really about one AI model, but about whether the government can use national security tools to pressure private companies into compliance. And the bigger implication here is that as AI becomes more central to defense and intelligence, the line between voluntary partnership and forced alignment is going to matter a lot more than it has in the past. A federal jury has ruled that Elon Musk deliberately pushed down Twitter's stock price back in 2022 when he tweeted that his $44 billion deal was temporarily on hold over bot concerns, which plaintiffs argued was less about spam accounts and more about getting a better price. Now, the jury didn't go all the way on the conspiracy claims, but they did find Musk liable on 2 fraud counts, with damages expected to land around $2.5 billion. A number that sounds massive until you remember who we're talking about here. Now, Musk says he plans to appeal, so this is likely heading into a longer legal fight. Still, a jury of 9 people recently looked at one of the most powerful figures in tech and said, yeah, that crossed the line, which is not something you often hear. And the real takeaway is that even in a world where markets can move at the speed of a tweet, there may finally be some limits on who gets to move them and how. All right, so this morning we got a special treat for you as I want to welcome today's first guest. He is the co-founder and CEO of Fedi and a zealous advocate for Bitcoin mass adoption. So I want to welcome to the show Obi Nwosu, everybody. Obi, welcome to the show. We're so pumped to have you. How are you this morning? Great to have you on the show.
I'm very good. I am feeling great after a week being under the weather. The sun's out, happiness out. So good.
Well, we're super happy to have you, Obi, and we have a lot to talk about this morning, my friend. So let's jump into it. And what I like to do whenever we have one of our guests on the show is kind of get a little idea of your background. So before we get into Fedi and what you and the team are doing over there, I want to start with you for a second, Obi. So for people who are hearing your name for the first time, tell us a little bit about your background and what pulled you into Bitcoin in the first place. We'd love to know more.
Wow. So I have been in the Bitcoin space for a while now. My first got into space in 2013, in fact. I ended up building what went on to be the longest running Bitcoin exchange in the UK. It ran for nearly a decade.
Oh, wow.
We were listed on the NASDAQ, and we built one of the first physically delivered Bitcoin futures in the world, many firsts. Prior to that, I've been a geek all my life, and I've been in the dot-com space since before the 2000s. When I discovered Bitcoin in 2011, I realized that this was the first meritocratic money. And I do resonate with Saylor's view that for me, it was hope that there was a chance, if we worked hard and we weren't complacent, that you could make the world a better place by providing this freedom technology to the world. Since then, there'll be many other freedom technologies, and we can talk about more about that later.
Yeah, no, we got a lot to talk about. I appreciate you giving us the quick background of how you got into the space. And now I kind of want to shift the conversation to learn more about Fedi, because it's really an interesting concept. So, Obi, when you're explaining it to someone who's not necessarily deep into crypto or Bitcoin, how would you describe what Fedi actually is and what it does?
Well, first of all, you have to understand it about what we believe. And we believe that we should empower humanity through freedom technologies. And freedom technologies like Bitcoin, like Lightning, like Fedimint and others. But what Fedi is specifically is at its core is this privacy first mobile app that brings together a Bitcoin wallet, chat, community, and infinitely customizable mini apps, which are growing every single day. We have 100 and more are coming all the time that allow you to extend the Fedi app in any way you want. Think about it as a dematerialized iPhone.
Oh, cool. So who is this for, Obi? Is this more for hardcore Bitcoin users, or can this be for people newer to the space? Who's kind of your target right now, your target clientele?
So we think over time, everybody who values freedom will want this, which should be everybody. Yeah. But we start from the people who have this as a clear and present need. So those are people who lack freedom politically or lack freedom financially. So we started actually after a visit to the Oslo Freedom Forum with the Human Rights Foundation. And we met some of the bravest men. I met some of the bravest men and women I ever had the honor of meeting, who are human rights defenders working to increase freedom around the world, and free the people they cared about from who are under the yoke of authoritarian regimes. So one core target market are people living under the yoke of authoritarian regimes and the communities that they deal with. The others are people who lack financial freedom. So these are people who are based in the global south who are disempowered, and so they would like access to the same services we take for granted, but they don't have access to that. And then finally, the next core market that we work with are privacy-focused Bitcoiners who understand the importance of privacy, that privacy is power for the everyman. Not everybody is powerful. And so the only other way to get power and security in this world is through privacy. Now, we believe that that market is everybody everywhere, and that will continue to grow over time as we all gain a greater understanding of how important privacy is. But those are the three markets we focus on right now.
I love that. I feel like that's a mission everybody can get behind, and those are increasingly more important things, especially as we see how tech is evolving right now. And when you just started Fedi, Obi, what was missing from the current Bitcoin ecosystem that made you feel like, you know, this is a product that needs to exist instead of just maybe improving what was already out there?
So, as I said, I like to say private is key. And you're saying it's increasingly important, but I would like to counter that it's always been fundamental and important.
Sure.
The problem was it was difficult for people to access. And so what was missing was a tool and a set of services, both physical, on the ground, human elements. We call them the Fedi Order, and the members are called Fedi Knights, who locate communities, educate communities, and support them, because this is not something you can just throw over the fence from Silicon Valley and expect it to work. And the second thing is you need a tool that brings everything together, the best of the freedom technologies that are out there, that already exists, puts them together in an easy to use package and makes it available to people. And once you do that, and once you combine the human element with the all-in-one technological element, you realize that privacy is not only key, but privacy is also easy. It's the easiest experience. It's the best experience.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Fedi Nights. I see what you did there. I love that. That's great. And before we move on and kind of get on to some more general topics about what's going on in the Bitcoin ecosystem currently, I would love to know, for someone downloading Fedi for the first time, like, what does that experience look like? What are they able to do inside the app that makes it maybe feel different from a typical wallet or app experience they've used before?
That's a great question. And that's one of the beauties of working with people on the ground. We spent the first couple of years having these users who have real usage and needs right now beat out every user interface assumption that we had and we thought we had from our position of subconscious privilege. And so when you download the app, it's also a progressive web app, so you can just click the link and get it. When you download it, you click one button to say get started, and you're in the app. You can start using it immediately. There's no requirement for email. There's no requirement for KYC, because KYC and privacy are philosophically opposite concepts. And you're in. And then you will see 4 things you can do. You can access chat and you can talk to people, similar to the experience of using something like a Telegram or Signal, but you can be assured that it's private to the same level of privacy as something like Signal. You will be able to transact with a wallet-like experience. And again, but you're using what's called eCash, federated eCash, a protocol called Fedi. My co-founder was the inventor of this protocol, which is an incredible privacy-preserving, easy to use technology to allow you to make payments, but running on top of Bitcoin and backed by Bitcoin. You'll be able to access this universe of mini apps. And these are apps that exist on the web already, but they can be loaded and integrated into the Fedi app and extend its functionality in any way that you can imagine, wherever that be, allowing you to buy Bitcoin with one mini app, or spend it, or convert it into a SIM card, or convert it into a credit card or debit card, or be able to search the web to find local services that provide you Bitcoin and more. And finally, there's community, which is, think of it like Discord or a Slack, but you can take your community and find a hub for them, a home for them online, where you can interact together and you can use all the other features. You can have mini apps set up for your community. You can have chats and group chats for your community, and you can make payments and have a group savings account for your community, or whatever you may want to do. So it's one place, and I don't have to search and figure it all out. And if I do need help, there's one button click and I can talk to the Fedi Council, who are the online help, or I can find my local Fedi Night, who I can arrange a time to come and train my community. So we solve the entire problem for them.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, so just hearing you talk about it, like, this sounds like something I need to check out myself. And I'm sure there's plenty of people in our audience this morning that are like, this is really piquing my interest. So what's the best way to get involved with Fedi? Is just go to fedi.com and sign up, or what's that process like for someone who's interested in learning more?
There's many options. If you go, we're at every local Bitcoin meetup or conference around the world. We're heavily representing the global South, much more in the West, especially with some of our partnerships with Bitcoin Park in the US, and extending more this year in Europe. And you'll find someone who is from the Bitcoin, from the Fedi team, who will be available, one of the Fedi Nights or Fedi Masters there. The second thing is you just go to our website, fedi.xyz. You can download the app and you can start using it immediately. You can use it straight away as a private communication system, if that's what you want to do. You can use it as a way to organize your community. You can use it as a way to explore the world of freedom apps out there, mini apps that we've already curated on your behalf. And you can use it as a privacy-preserving wallet. And so those are the 2 options. Go to the site, download it and start playing around today, or go to one of the conferences that's in your local area. And if we're not there, message us, and if there's demand, we'll have someone there.
Well, it sounds like something you'd be silly not to do. So I certainly encourage our audience to check that out, Obi. And, while I got you, Obi, I was really excited to have you on the show this morning because you clearly have such a grasp on the space right now. So I kind of wanted to talk about some of the broader topics we're experiencing in the Bitcoin ecosystem currently. And one of them you mentioned earlier that I know is very important to you is privacy because we know in the Bitcoin space, it is something that gets talked about a lot, but it's not always clear to people, especially for those that are new to the space. And, our audience is a mix of hardcore Bitcoiners and people that are just starting to dip their toes into that orange water, so to speak. So for some of our audience that is watching at home right now, in simple terms, why should they actually care about privacy when it comes to their money? Because believe it or not everybody fully understands that right now.
Well, I think when it comes to money, you want security. You've just attained money, you need to secure, and you want security for your money, you want security for yourself, your friends and family. This is a basic human need. Now, to get security, there's only two ways to do that in this world. You can get it through power or through privacy. So power, that can be financial power, that can be political power, that can be martial power. I say you can be Jackie Chan and Jet Li, and you can take them on one by one. The problem with all of those, they're only available to the powerful. Now, privacy is available to everyone. Just think about, I've asked you to think about Satoshi. No visible, no office, no visible power, no army. But yet, if he or she was on this call today, if you were Satoshi, you can walk around the street freely. And that's not because of power. And in theory, he or she has nearly $100 billion worth of Bitcoin that they can use to buy a lot of power. But they have chosen, and the reason why they can do that is because of privacy, because that supersedes power. That gives them the ability to walk around freely. And privacy isn't a nice to have. It isn't something you add later. Without privacy, you are not you're not building wealth, you are advertising your wealth.
Oh.
And without privacy, Bitcoin itself doesn't become a freedom technology. It becomes 1984 coin. It becomes panoptic coin, a tool for mass surveillance and oppression. So not just for you, for Bitcoin, you need privacy. And people who understand this are, for example, the human rights defenders we work with. They are living in the future. They understand what happens when they don't have privacy. For them, it is a matter of life and death. But it is important, the stakes may not be as high in your mind, but it still is important to protect your privacy. You do not want to advertise every time you make a transaction, how much you have, how much you had, and how much you will always have in future from that one transaction. That person will know your entire financial history forevermore. And as that starts to become more and more clear, it will become clear to everybody that private is key.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that breakdown. That made a lot of sense and very well said. And outside of the kind of Bitcoin and crypto ecosystem, though, there's often this common, I'm going to call it a misperception that privacy means you're trying to hide something. We've heard it with the Silk Road, like, oh, they're using the Bitcoins. It must be because Bitcoin is used for illegal transactions. And you and I both know that's not the case. So when people come to you with those types of objections about Bitcoin, how do you help them understand the difference between having financial privacy and actually doing something wrong? Because somehow we still have a huge contingent of the population that seems to conflate the two.
I think I don't need to do anything with that because we are already seeing a lot of growth in demand, and life answers that question on my behalf.
Okay.
Do you have anything to hide? Yes, people always have things to hide. Even if it just comes to your money, you want to be able to hide the wealth you have. You don't walk around advertising when you go into every shop how much money you earn. That will put you at physical risk. And when you use Bitcoin on a blockchain or any other cryptocurrency, but if you use Bitcoin as well, without any privacy technology, it's the equivalent of walking around advertising how much money you have. It's even worse. It's the equivalent of advertising how much you have, how much you have ever had at any point in time, and then From then on, you walk past that shop, they will know how much you have forevermore. So if you have $5 today, but in 10 years time, you have $5 million because you just won the lottery. The instant you win the lottery, everyone you've ever transacted with will also know that you now own $5 million. And so you may not feel like you're a target today, but can you guarantee that you're not going to be a target tomorrow? And your actual desire and ambition is to be more successful in the future. But now every transaction you've ever made will be a threat vector for you. So ignore everything else. You want privacy because in the same way you want privacy for your cash right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'd be furious if someone found out that I won the lottery back in 2012. I mean, never mind about that. But you make some good points there, Obi. And I want to shift gears a little bit because you were a very interesting guy. And you had your... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You've told everybody too late.
Oh, shoot, did I? Darn it. Oh, man, that was quite the faux pas for me. I swear, I didn't win the lottery. That was crazy. Now, I want to kind of shift gears, Obi, because I know you are into a lot of things, not just privacy. And I was doing my due diligences on you, and I saw you've spent a lot of time focused on Bitcoin adoption. And I think you touched on it earlier, specifically in the global South. But there's a lot of people out there that aren't familiar with that term. So could you kind of break down, like, what does that mean and why is that part of the world so important in this conversation?
So the global South, some people call it and because it's also an accurate term, is the global majority because it's where the majority of people live. But putting it in a geographic context, it's Latin America, Southeast Asia, Africa is the region. These regions have more than their fair share of authoritarian regimes, more than their fair share of disempowered communities. So they have people who right now don't need to be explained why it's important to have financial freedom, both for political or financial reasons. And that's why it made sense to focus on these people as a market. Also, just the nature of the team that we had, a lot of people have an absolute passion for supporting these communities, but we work with everybody worldwide. But in terms of working there, we have a plethora of projects to be working with. Some examples are, we have a series of projects in Africa, where we're providing satellite internet paid for in Bitcoin, in sats. We call it Satinet. And we're working in conjunction. You might know these organizations, Gridless, who provides off-grid Bitcoin mining in East Africa. AfriBit as well was featured on BBC. That's working with communities in one of the largest informal settlements in East Africa to educate them on Bitcoin and help them save Bitcoin by cleaning up their own communities. And we're working with them to provide low-cost wireless internet payable in sats to places in the global South, East Africa, in this region that need it the most. So we're starting in Kenya, where we literally, as of a few hours ago, finished our first deployment in Mosul Bay in South Africa as well. There's a long list of people that want this. And it's an incredible experience because the problem is with Bitcoin and any other technology, freedom technology, they need the internet. So without the internet, they're pretty limited. There is a slight asterisk of eCash, which is the technology behind the wallet functionality in Fedi. You can actually send payments with that for limited periods of time with no internet. But eventually you do need internet. So that's one example. Two other quick examples. Well, one other quick example in the global South is Bitcoin Indonesia, where they are taking the Fedi technology and the technology behind it, Fedi Mint, and they've been massively expanding it across Indonesia, starting in Bali, to a diverse group of Bitcoin communities. So that's another exciting area on the other side of the world.
That's amazing. You're really doing God's work out there, Obi. I got to say, it's impressive. And I think an important part about what you're doing is, based on where you are geographically in the world right now, it seems like Bitcoin means very different things to those people in those different areas. Like here in the United States, right, we don't understand how important it is, especially in countries like a lot of people don't, in South America, where inflation is absolutely killing people's ability to preserve their wealth. So my question for you, Obi, is when you're actually on the ground or talking to people in these regions that you mentioned, what are the real problems they're facing that Bitcoin solves beyond what we kind of think of Bitcoin here in maybe the United States or other parts of the Western world?
Well, we also before I go on to that, we also
Yeah.
have really interesting usage in the United States, for example.
Oh,
We just recently featured on our site Bitcoin Harlem, which is they want to train people in the United States on the East Coast about Bitcoin, but they want to start people who are at day zero in their knowledge, and it's a really easy on ramp by using Fedi, and they can also get them to join this sort of digital town hall and to talk and have more experienced members of the community help them. So they're using the communication aspects of the Fedi app, and that's what, in terms of using features, that's what they're prioritizing there. And from there, they can also provide them a curated set of mini apps, which is sort of like this curated version of the internet with just the things that help them understand the power of Bitcoin. And then in the same app that they are communicating, they also have their wallet. So that's their usage. In Bitcoin Indonesia, it was very interesting because in Indonesia, normal usage of Bitcoin is restricted for regulatory reasons. But if they created the Fediment is called a federation, or it's called like a wallet service. But if they could use this legal option, which was called a closed loop system, which allowed them to operate and show people and use Bitcoin within this community, within the confines of the law. But that was only possible if they used the Fediment technology. So that's why it's been exploding, because there's a huge demand. And this is one of the few ways where you can use and transact Bitcoin. And that's the situation in Indonesia. And in Satinet, I give you an example of Satinet. The reason there is by empowering people through Bitcoin mining and Fediment and so on, they can have access to internet at low cost, satellite internet, paid for in Bitcoin. And in so doing, they also subliminally learn by their lived-in experience the idea of inflation and deflation. They never explained it; they just experience it every day. When you're buying in Bitcoin and the amount of Bitcoin you have to use goes down over time, you realize, what is this SAT stuff that I'm using to pay for this internet? Maybe I start saving it. And what we observe is that without telling anybody, they start saving this thing because they realize it's a better money. And finally, where we started was we work with human rights defenders and the communities they care about. And many of those cases, they cannot use the banking system in those countries. If they did, and they received donations from abroad, the moment it's received, it will be frozen. And if it's not frozen, the recipient would be arrested, tortured, and maybe even worse. And so they need an alternative system outside of the banking system, a parallel system. And that's Bitcoin, but they need it to be easy to use. They're not techno geeks or hyper libertarians. They're just people who want freedom and they want something that works. And again, in their case, they look and the answer is an all-in-one service where we can also help by supporting them and training them, and training their trainers is a solution for them. So it depends on the scenario, it depends on the location, but those are four of the sort of the most common types of scenarios.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's like Fedi acts as a wallet, it acts as a privacy tool, it acts as a communications platform, and it acts as an on-ramp to financial education. If I wasn't doing the show right now, I'd be signing up myself, because this is just too good for me not to check out. So before I let you go, Obi, you've given us so much amazing info today, and the Fedi team is doing, like I said, God's work over there. I'm sure you've got at least a couple new fans from our audience this morning who want to check out Fedi. So one more time, where can they go to learn more about Fedi? And you've had some great takes, and maybe check out what you're up to on X. You got a handle or something they can follow, because you're spitting truth and people want to know more.
So Fedi is fedi.xyz. That's fedi.xyz. Super easy. And you can see all of our handles, Nostar, Twitter, X, Instagram is just launched up, YouTube and more. And then for me, it's very easy. It's Obi on Twitter. So that's just x.com/OBI.
Amazing.
But every time I say that nowadays, I show my age, so I get a bit bit shy on that one. But yes,
you look really young. I would have thought you were like 25. I have no idea. So you fooled me. You look
That's
great.
exactly how old I am. That's exactly how old I am.
Yeah. Well, there you go. You look great. You're doing God's work out there, and I really appreciate you joining us this morning, Obi. It's been such a fun time getting to chat with you and pick your brain, and I hope we get to have you back real soon. I know we got Frank Corbin from your team at Fedi who joins us on the show once a week, and this was an absolute treat too. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a great start to your week.
Thank you. This was an amazing start. Nice to meet you, Hank.
I loved it. Obi, pleasure. We got to have you back again sometime and enjoy changing the world, man. You're doing great out there. We love to see it.
We're doing great. It's only because of the team, because of the family.
Love to hear it. I love to hear it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Obi, and enjoy your Monday, my friend. Cheers. All right, we're going to take a quick break here at RoxomTV News, but when we're back, we got more of today's top news stories and a special couple guests coming your way in just a bit, so stay tuned. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to RoxomTV News. I'm coming to you from my virtual studio today, but the top news stories aren't stopping, so let's get back into it. Because this morning, President Trump is signaling that the conflict with Iran may be easing up, at least for now. He posted that the U.S. and Iran have had what he described as very good and productive conversations toward a complete and total resolution, and has ordered the Pentagon to pause strikes on Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for 5 days. Now, Iran responded almost immediately, saying there have been no direct or indirect talks, and framing the move as the U.S. backing off after Tehran warned it could target Gulf energy infrastructure. So there are really two possibilities here. Either quiet negotiations are happening, or Trump's 48-hour ultimatum on Saturday to send out strikes got no compliance, and now he's walking it back. Now, this signals how quickly the tone of a conflict can shift without a formal agreement. Now, this matters because even in small changes in posture can ripple into energy prices, global markets, and how close things are to either escalation or real de-escalation. And after Trump's 48-hour ultimatum to Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or the U.S. will hit and obliterate Iran's power plants, his words, markets in Asia dropped. Japan's Nikkei dropped nearly 5%. South Korea's Kospi fell more than 6% and briefly triggered a trading halt after futures dropped past key thresholds. Hong Kong's Hang Seng and China's CSI 300 both slid around 2% at the open. And this hits a little differently for Asia than it does for the United States. You see, South Korea gets roughly 70% of its crude oil from the Middle East. Japan, that number is closer to 90%. And both economies are deeply dependent on energy flowing through Hormuz. And over the past 3 weeks, that flow has already been disrupted in a very meaningful way. Now, this isn't theoretical for them. A South Korean lawmaker told Reuters that the country's semiconductor industry is now worried about helium supply coming out of the Middle East, which is critical for chip manufacturing. So you're not only talking about fuel, you're talking about supply chains tied to some of the most important industries in the global economy. At the same time, oil prices are staying very elevated. Brent crude is sitting at around $114 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate is above $100. Goldman Sachs estimated that the recent surge in energy prices could shave about 0.3% off global GDP over the next year, while pushing inflation up by roughly half a percentage point. And they were clear that the risks are skewed toward things getting worse if the strait remains closed. Now, in the United States, the reaction has been more muted so far. Futures were relatively flat overnight, with the S&P 5 down slightly, but the underlying trend is already starting to show some cracks. The S&P closed last week below its 200-day moving average for the first time since May, and the Dow Jones has now posted its first 4-week losing streak since 2023. So while U.S. markets haven't had the same immediate drop, the pressure is certainly building. We're bringing one of my favorite guests and friends of the program. He's got the biggest beats in the business, my good friend Stephen Orr. Stephen, welcome. Happy Monday. We've missed you. So great to have you back on the show. How are you?
Thanks, Hank. Wow, that's a really great introduction I'm getting this morning. I love it.
I've just missed you so much. We're just so happy you're back. I haven't had the beats like I'm used to. So let's get into it, Stephen, because I know your time is valuable this morning. So, Stephen, when we hear that the markets in Asia are dropping 5 to 6% overnight, it can feel like something happening far away, especially in the United States. It's literally on the other side of the globe. But in this case, it's tied directly to the Strait of Hormuz. So can you help us connect those dots for a second? Why does a potential disruption there hit economies like Japan and South Korea immediately and so hard? Is it just because all of it seems like a huge portion of their oil supply is from the Middle East, so they're getting hit pretty hard? Is it as simple as that?
It's a little bit more complicated than that. And let's back it up a little bit to understand. The one thing we all have to understand is no matter what happens anywhere in the world, it always affects everybody else too. This is not just a single place. If oil constraints happen at the Strait of Hormuz, do oil constraints happen at Texas? No, it's a different place, right? So let's walk into the right place here. So when you look at Asian markets, they need oil. We all need oil. We all live on oil, but the biggest gulper of that oil is the United States. Now we also are an exporter of oil too, so that doesn't hurt us. But Asian markets are literally the place where they have to literally import almost all of it. And 20% of oil production does happen in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Iran, even Iraq at the time, Oman, UAE, they all produce oil, and it all goes through one little area. What it did show in the markets over the last few days is just how much paper is and derivatives are around the oil markets. So a lot of the oil pricing isn't just, quite frankly, just how much oil are they drinking. It's also how much oil paper around that. The futures markets, the derivatives markets, the options markets are also around it. And this morning you saw that very easily when the oil dropped completely out of bed. Gold markets the same way. And now you're seeing in the gold markets, you're seeing countries like Russia and China and Asian markets who had been stockpiling gold are now selling gold to buy dollars, to buy oil. So that is hurting them, right? And yes, we do need gold in phones. We need oil to produce the petroleum products to produce phones and technology and to be able to move things. And the old Dow theory says if it moves, it's burning energy. So all of those things are the same thing. Now, when I look at the markets from an outside perspective and say, okay, what really is affecting the oil market in general? It's very simple. It's the old adage since 1864, supply and demand. And the supply hasn't changed. The demand hasn't changed in the United States. Demand hasn't changed in Asia, but supply has changed in Asia. So you're going to start to see a little disruption in the oil markets. That disrupts most of the Asian markets. So that's why you're seeing these massive moves. And when you're seeing those halts that are coming on, and I'm glad that they still have those on there, the limits, it's at 3% and 7% during a day to stop slow down trading. If we didn't have it, we'd have some problems. But at the same time, you're also, which I'm glad we don't have that in crypto, right? It just goes. But when you look at the oil market, it is not a $27 trillion market. It is an absolute gigantic quadrillion-dollar market. So you can't just say, hey, there's going to be a little disruption in oil. It can't be just based on every Trump tweet about Iran. It cannot be based on whether the Iranian parliament is happy. It can't be about the Strait of Hormuz. It's got to be literally supply and demand. And the problem is, okay, if supply dries up in the Middle East because of the Strait of Hormuz, then we got to get it somewhere else. And the other places in the United States because we are an exporter.
Right.
You also saw where the Asian countries also told the refineries to step up their game plan, to refine more. So we also have a constraint not only at the supply chain, but also in the refineries, which is a big issue.
Yeah. And you mentioned, what happens in one part of the world affects all the other parts too. We live in this global economy now. So I want to talk about the you, the me, and the audience of it all here in the United States. Because if this disruption in Hormuz were to continue, what do you think that's actually going to start to look like for people watching at home, for you, for me? Are we talking higher energy prices, supply chain issues, inflation? Am I going to be paying $10 for gas soon? Like, what are your thoughts that will happen if this conflict continues to be prolonged and we don't get any real, conclusions here in the next few weeks and months? Where do you think we're going to head from there?
This is not the early ages of the 1970s where we did have the oil crisis back then. But I am saying, and I've still said it, and I'm saying it again, and now it's all over the news, now it's stagflation, where inflation goes up, unemployment goes down. There are barriers of both sides. Now, will we get $10 a gallon of gas? Maybe in California. Sorry, Hank. But, around the country, no, not really. There are levers that we can pull in order to slow that down. One of them is the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, of which we've already started tapping into, about 460 million barrels. We have supplied that back since COVID time. But we are taking something, dipping back into it again. It's kind of a smart move that Trump made with buying oil cheap and selling it at a higher price, right? Because when you release the SPR, you're still selling it. People are still buying it, but we have to buy it, put it in the SPR, and they bought it around 50 and now selling it at around 95. So that's a nice profit that the White House is making on this. But I will also say that, yes, no matter how prices go, it's always the consumer that has to pay the end bill. And I will also tell you that major companies like Exxon and Mobil and Shell and Marathon are taking advantage of this price move. Oil companies, by the way, do not like high prices in oil. Oh, they do too, Big B. No, they actually don't. They like easy, they like calm and steady around 70 to $70 a barrel. They don't like 50 to 55. It's too low because it costs them money when they have to drill it. And when it gets to 100 to 150, they don't like it because people complain and they stop driving because they don't want to put their gas in their car, right?
Right.
Refineries hate it because they don't know what to refine. Do we refine gasoline? How do we crack it up with a crack spread? So in their case, they don't like this. They want easy, nice, steady, but they are dumping every time it gets to $100. It's a good sell price, right? Because you're seeing a lot of dumping because petroleum companies are dumping it. They already have barrels of oil. They own the oil. They just want to dump it back onto the market. So they do that, and then the price comes back down. So right now, I'm not too concerned about all of it. Honestly, I think the president is right. This is a 4-week war. We are into the 4th week. Can he get it done? I don't know. There is some back and forth. And as you top of the hour, you just said this, that, hey, Mr. President, are you telling the truth or is Iran telling the truth? And I'm going to side, believe it or not, with Trump on this one. I'm not sure that Iran is telling the truth on all this.
Yeah.
Did he actually have discussions with somebody? Yes, I believe he did. Was it the new Ayatollah of the Sun? Probably not. Is it the parliament? Probably not. They said no. Okay. But something is getting done in the back end. And I'm kind of glad we don't really know, because in a war, I don't want the news to know it first. I want the people that are in power to actually talk it out, hash it out, and then tell us what actually happened.
Yeah.
Then I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you make a good point. This could be a bluff by the Iranian government to maybe leverage better terms behind the scenes, saying, "Hey, we're never going to stop doing this until our terms are met." That would be a leverage play. So I could see that happening. And I know we got to let you go in here in just a second, but I have one final quick question for you, Big B. I was watching about this story develop over the weekend. Excuse me, and I saw one influencer who's like a financial influencer who was mentioning that due to the uncertainty we're seeing in the Strait, you said the oil markets like calm, they like certainty, they want it relaxed. He says that the repricing of that oil, we are never going to see oil come back down because these insurance companies are having to reprice risk going forward on these ships coming through the Strait of Hormuz. And I think they said that some of these insurance rates went up massive amounts. Do you think that our oil prices will ever come back down to what they were before the war? Or is there maybe a danger of we're kind of seeing the end of cheap gasoline as we saw it because we have to price in this risk going forward?
Nope, he's wrong. Quite frankly, look, we have a glut of oil. And the person that said that, I don't know who said that, but I can tell you they don't know the oil markets at all. The United States has so much oil that in the 70s and 80s, we were an importer of oil. We are an exporter of oil, folks. There's no such thing as drill, baby, drill. The last rig count was only up by 1. If it was such a bad deal, we would go out and drill more holes in the ground. We don't even need to do that. Exxon and Mobil are companies that go out and they have so many holes in the ground. They put a nice bow on it, put a number on it, and go away from it because they don't want to touch it. They do that because we want to buy Saudi Arabian oil. We want to buy Middle Eastern oil at a higher price because when the oil dries up in this case in Saudi Arabia, there are 2 oil fields there. The Ghawar oil field is one of them. It's actually running out of oil in Saudi Arabia. That's why they're turning the course of what they're investing in, having their own Saudi Aramco, right? So I know that's totally wrong. Is it going to be in the 30s and $40 a barrel? No, but 50, 60, 70. You saw what happened this morning. The very second Trump made a tweet, we were in the upper 80s, and then it went to lower 80s in less than a second. We're back to what, $90, $89 a barrel. This was $100 a barrel. 10% drop? No, they're wrong, right? On a tweet.
Good.
Not on I understand the fundamentals, because that guy does not understand the fundamentals. If it's a guy, I'm sorry. But no, let's be real honest. Let's talk about oil for one last second before I go. When you look at the production of oil and you look at the selling of oil, there is a commonality of all companies and all countries. It's the US dollar. The US dollar is what oil is priced in. It's in quadrillions, folks, not in billions or billions or trillions. Quadrillions of dollars are out in the markets, and they have to buy oil in dollars. So when the Chinese gets their oil from Iran or from Russia, wherever, they're still priced in dollars, right? So when I look at that side of the equation, the United States controls that side of the equation with the banking side, and another good reason why we should quote tokenize it.
That's right.
Right? Because it keeps it steady, right? But when you look at the let's just say the future, and everybody wants to know when. So let's give you 3 to 6 months. The price will probably be back in the 60s and 70s by probably June or July. Now, June or July is summertime. So yes, there is some more driving. We get that. And nobody's stopping their Amazon purchases. So FedEx is still buying gasoline and diesel. I get all of that. But then we get back to normality and they'll get back to it. During COVID was the first time oil went negative. Oil went negative in price by a negative $80 at one point, I believe it was. Why? Because there was so much oil sitting off the coast in tankers. They couldn't even dump. And when they wanted to dump it, they had to dump it at negative pricing. That was crazy. It's never been. Yeah, so no, this is not going to do it. Companies do not like $100 a barrel. They don't like $50 a barrel. So find some place in the middle, and that's about where it's going to settle.
Well, Stephen, this is just another reason I love you. I've been freaking out about this, but your big beats are assuaging my fears and helping me get rid of, really get through all the noise we're hearing on the interwebs. Even I'm subject to it as well. And that's why we love having you here at Roxom TV, where we're trying to cut through that noise ourselves and get to the real truth of what's going on. So I want to thank you so much for your time, as always. It's always a real treat for me to start my week off with some of the best big beats in the business. So I want to thank you. And before I let you go, I know you have your own platform, Quasar Markets, that is helping democratize the financial institution by letting the little fish compete with the big boys out there. And I know people need to be checking it out if they haven't already. So really quick, tell us about it and where they can find it if our audience hasn't checked it out already.
Hank, the new website's up, the new platform's up, quasarmarkets.com. And next week I will bring someone to your show that has not been done before. So I'll break something news on your show next week, my man.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited for it, Big B, and I'm excited for an exciting week here. Thank you, as always, for helping us get it off on the right foot, and I can't wait to see you and your special guest with us next week.
Thanks, Hank.
Thank you. Cheers, buddy. All right, we're taking a break here at RoxomTV News. We'll be back in just a few minutes after this quick break. We got more of today's top news stories coming up, and in just a bit, we have another special guest joining us to make sense of the chaos of this world. So stay tuned. More RoxomTV News coming your way in just a sec. Hey everyone, welcome back to Roxom TV News. We're going to take a quick break from our normal Roxom TV News programming this morning, and I'm going to be joining what's going on live right now as President Donald Trump is participating in the Memphis Safe Task Force. Let's listen in and see what's going on.
I believed in you that you're going to make a difference to make this country great again. While this wasn't an immigration-led operation, sir, we did have 619 illegal aliens arrested, 7 of those which were Venezuelans that were paroled into this country or TDA gang members, 1 El Sal that raped a child, and another Honduras male that raped several children. Because of your leadership, we were able to get these violent criminals out of our neighborhoods, and sir, Memphis going forward is going to be the example, as Mr. Miller said, for decades to come. So on behalf of the men and women of ICE, the special agents of Homeland Security, we thank you for your leadership.
Thank you very much, Judd. And just, if I might, so you're at the front of a storm. The Democrats have caused lots of problems at the airports and all other places too. We shouldn't be in this position, especially when we're in conflict elsewhere. But how are you doing, and how is ICE doing at the airports and helping out?
Oh, sir, to just have the opportunity to help our other fellow officers at Department of Homeland Security, we're doing great. We're going to make sure that your promise is kept, that we're going to help those lines move, and we're going to make people safe. And no one should be nervous to go to the airport, because we're going to make sure that every traveler in spring break has a safe journey.
I appreciate it. Great job. You're doing a great job. Thank you very much. Rob Cicada, please. Rob.
Mr. President, thank you for your assembling of the Memphis Safe Task Force. Your leadership empowered ATF and all of our state and local partners to focus on the most dangerous criminals operating in Memphis. Violent repeat felons, many walking the streets, despite having 3, 4, and 5 felony convictions, are no longer doing so. They're no longer walking these streets without the fear of federal and state local and state law enforcement getting together and taking them off the streets. We focused our efforts on the most violent gang members operating in Memphis, so much so that we've decapitated the leadership of the Rich and Ruthless gang and the Vice Lord gangs operating here in Memphis. Their leadership, their membership, is currently running the streets without any sort of direction. The gang members are falling apart. They're weakened. Their ability to coordinate and commit violent crimes are broken down because of the Memphis Safe Task Force. We've also been able to identify numerous firearms trafficking task force and evidence items that you see here were recovered from violent gang members. Many of these firearms were converted from semi-automatic weapons to be able to accept machine gun conversion devices, which now allow these rifles and pistols to shoot full auto. Those weapons were used by the gang members to terrorize this community and commit numerous homicides and numerous aggravated assaults. Those networks were identified and removed from operations. One in particular was operating three 3D printing machines, making machine gun conversion devices in his house when search warrants were executed by ATF and our Memphis Safe Task Force partners. We are continually focused on preventing violent crime. In one instance, while we were out on patrol with our state and local partners, our agents responded to a shooting that had just occurred, located a victim that sustained serious gunshot injuries. Agents were able to render first aid on the scene and prevent that victim from bleeding out. Victim was transported to the hospital and ultimately survived because of the Memphis Safe Task Force being here. Our agents regularly talk to the members of the community. The community, when we first arrived, was in visible fear. They were afraid to walk out of their homes to the corner store. They were afraid to sit in their front yards because of being in fear of being victimized of a drive-by shooting. Those people are now approaching our agents and our partners, thanking us every day for being out there and taking the fear away from them so they and their family members could walk their communities and sit in their front yards and talk to their neighbors without fear of being killed or shot. So thank you for your support of law enforcement and for creating the Memphis Safe Task Force. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rob, and you do a fantastic job. Thank you very much. One of the best crime fighters I know really from personal experience, because I've watched him more in D.C. than here, but I get the reports on what's happening in Memphis. And Terry Cole, please say a few words. Great job.
Mr. President, thank you for your leadership. It has given law enforcement the tools and the support to take this fight directly to the local street gangs, but also the cartels, the designated terrorists that are killing Americans. Your leadership is attacking not only the local street gangs here, but it's attacking the cartels in Mexico. It's attacking the cartels in Venezuela. It's attacking the cartels in Colombia and Ecuador. And it's setting the example for the world to see that they are designated terrorists. They are fueling the violence in our streets. The DEA, along with our local task forces, are disrupting the supply chain, dismantling networks, in saving American lives. This is America first. This is Americans first. The DEA is proud to stand along with our federal, state, tribal, and local partners here in Memphis with our amazing military and National Guard. The work has just started, Mr. President. We will take the battle wherever the battle leads us. But one thing can be rest assured. After you take Maduro out of Venezuela, after you take Mencho out of Mexico, after your diplomatic pressure forces the Mexicans to make a record seizure last week of 270 kilograms of fentanyl that was destined for the United States, this is truly due to your leadership. It's due to your partnership with law enforcement that enables us to do our job. A few small seizures from this task force is represented in front of you. Close to 190 kilograms of cocaine, close to 50 pounds of methamphetamine. But more importantly, this task force seized enough fentanyl to kill in lethal dosages close to 20 million Americans. 20 million Americans. In a separate case just outside of Memphis, working with our state and local law enforcement partners, we seized another 25 million lethal doses of fentanyl that was heading to our cities, heading to our streets. I will tell you, Mr. President, in my 3 tours here to Memphis to put on the gun, to put on the vest, and to go out in the community, I was welcomed. I was welcomed not only by an amazing Highway Patrol Colonel and his team, but I was welcomed by the community. I was invited to front porches. I was invited to an ice cream social. But that was in between the hard work of the men and women of the DEA and this task force that we're conducting daily. See, personally, I served 4 search warrants with the amazing men and women of DEA and the Memphis Police Department and Tennessee Highway Patrol because I believe in the mission of where you lead from the front. So thank you for giving us at the DEA the power to do our job again. Thank you for giving us these amazing relationships with these task forces and the Homeland Security Task Force and the Memphis Task Force and the Washington, D.C. Task Force. There's no command we won't go out and complete, Mr. President. We're here to execute your orders. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for this amazing opportunity to make America safe again, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Great job.
Out of kowtowing to the president.
So just in finishing up, we have 2 great people that happen to live here. One's a business owner and a good one, and one's a good one, also a resident. And we're going to ask you both to say a few words, please.
Mr. President, thank you for saving Memphis, and thank you for asking me to share my story. My name is Tim Pugh. I'm a co-founder and president of Pugh's Earthworks and Pugh's Flowers. My brothers and I have 2 family-owned businesses in Memphis, and this year marks our 50th year in business since we started our American dream. My entire family, including our new grandbaby, is living and working in Memphis. We want our family to feel and be safe. We have many friends that have moved away and encouraged their children to move away because of the escalating crime. We love Memphis and call it our home and would never want to move away. The crime in Memphis has affected my businesses. We've had several delivery vans full of flowers stolen as we're at the front door of someone's house delivering. Turn around and the van was gone. We've had landscape equipment stolen from job sites, so now we have to lock each piece of equipment to the truck while we're working on a property. And because of multiple break-ins, including one night we had 5 vans with the catalytic converter stolen on all 5. Due to repeated theft, we had to install an electric fence and multiple cameras around our main store to prevent this theft. All of this adds significant financial burdens and man hours. In the spring of last year, members of one of my landscape crews were robbed at gunpoint. This type of action became too normal in this city that I was raised in, and honestly, I felt that we were on a path of no return. How could we continue to operate our business when theft was rampant and, God forbid, lives were lost? Thankfully for you, Mr. President, we don't have to live and operate that way anymore. We have a great police force in Memphis, but they just needed reinforcements to get the crime under control. So thank you for bringing in those much-needed reinforcements. Our mayor has done a good job. Each week he's sending out emails of the progress, and just last Friday he reported that crime was down well over 40%. Honestly, Mr. President, I feel like crime is down 100%, and that is because of what you've done. We want Memphis to grow and prosper, and to do that you must have a low crime rate. People have to feel safe. That wasn't the case before, but now it is. Thank you to the task force and our city leaders for working together to make this happen. And thank you, Mr. President. Memphis owes you a lot of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you. Great. And your business is doing well. That's great. It's going to get better and better. You watch. Thank you very much. Delisha?
Thank you so much, Mr. President. It is a complete honor to be here with you today. Thank you for saving Memphis. My name is Delicia Ballinger, and I'm a lifelong Memphian, and I'm a mother. And I wanted to speak with you today, not just as a citizen, but as a mom who's lived through what Memphis has become. I remember a different Memphis. I remember when the city felt alive, when families didn't have to think twice about safety, when kids could just go outside and just be kids. We had places to go, things to do, and a sense of pride about where we come from. But over the years, that Memphis has faded, and what it was replaced with was fear. Before the Memphis Safe Task Force, I just didn't hear about crime, I lived it. I watched friends and people that I loved lose their lives to the senseless violence. I've attended funerals that never should have happened. I've seen families torn apart, mothers grieving, and children growing up without parents, all because of violence.
All right, gang, I think we're going to take a break from this again. This is President Donald Trump participating at the Memphis Safe Task Force meeting. We're just going to take a quick break here at RoxomTV News. And when we're back, we're tuning into our regularly scheduled programming to talk about more of today's top news stories. And in just a bit, we're going to be joined by one of my favorite guests. Q, like the letter, is going to be helping us make sense of all the madness. So stay tuned. RoxomTV News is coming right back your way after this very quick commercial break. Welcome back to RoxomTV News. We are back into our regularly scheduled programming this morning after that quick break to check out that conference in Memphis. So let's get back into the top news stories of our second hour of this morning's programming. This next one is taking place at one of the busiest and most tightly choreographed airports in the country, New York's LaGuardia, where a routine landing sequence broke down in a matter of seconds. You see, late Sunday night, an Air Canada regional jet arriving from Montreal struck a fire truck that had been cleared to cross the runway, crushing the nose of the aircraft and killing both pilots. A witness recorded the aftermath. Let's take a look.
The plane just tilted back. It was on the ground on the nose. As they're deplaning, it just lifted in the air.
A wild sight indeed, and there were 76 people on board that flight, with 41 taken to the hospital, though most have since been released. Now, officials say the fire truck was responding to a separate emergency involving a United Airlines flight. Air traffic control audio captures the moment the situation unraveled, with the controller urgently saying to stop the truck. Let's take a listen.
Truck 1 and company crossing 4 at Delta.
Frontier 4195 to stop there, please. Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. Stop, truck 1, stop. Delta 2603, go around, runway heading 2000. Jet 646. Jet 646, I see you collide with a vehicle here, just hold position. I know you can't move. The vehicles are responding to you now.
Is the runway closed?
Truck 1 and company crossing 4 at Delta.
Frontier 4195 to stop there, please.
Now, this marks the third deadly aviation incident in the United States in under 3 months, which is great because I'm taking a flight after the show. And that's adding to the growing pressure of an airport system that's already dealing with staffing issues, long security lines, and operational strain. And for those of you who are watching at home, this is certainly a reminder of how much modern air travel relies on precise timing and coordination, because when multiple moving parts overlap at the wrong moment, even a system designed for safety can fail pretty quickly. Moving on, President Trump is extending his 48-hour ultimatum to Iran. He postponing threatened strikes on Iranian power plants by 5 days and saying there have been very good and productive conversations toward a complete and total resolution. Iran's response came quickly and directly and contradicted the U.S. narrative, framing the move as the U.S. backing off after Tehran warned it could target Gulf energy infrastructure. They added that regional countries have attempted to reduce tensions, but directed all such efforts back toward the United States. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz remains functionally closed. U.S. Central Command says it is technically open, but ships are staying away due to continued missile and drone attacks, and transit has dropped by 94% since the war began. Oil markets reflect that very disruption, with Brent crude around $114 before Trump's announcement, and the International Energy Agency warning that the current situation is worse than the oil crisis of 1973 and 1979 combined, with at least 40 energy facilities across 9 countries severely damaged. Now, at the same time here, military activities are continuing. Israel launched what it described as a wide-scale wave of strikes on infrastructure targets in Tehran on Monday, while Iran has fired more than 400 rockets toward Israel over the past 3 weeks, with over 90% having been intercepted. So despite the language around diplomacy we're seeing, the conflict itself is not slowing down. All right. We're going to take a quick break here at RoxomTV News. And when we're back, we're going to be joined by our special guest of the second hour in just a bit to help make sense of it all. So stay tuned. RoxomTV coming right back after this. All right, welcome back to RoxomTV News. I want to welcome to the show one of our good friends of the program. He helps bring us the best beats of what is going on with the current situation in Iran. So I'd like to welcome Q, like the letter Q. It's always great to have you back on the program this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you this Monday?
Hey, thank you as always for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to get to be here and chat with you about everything.
Oh, the pleasure is all ours, Q. And we got a lot to pick your brain about because I know you are well versed on what's going on. So let's kind of start with what's happening recently, because over the last 72 hours, we've gone from talks of potentially winding the war down to threats of obliterating Iran's power plants to now a 5-day pause with quote unquote productive talks. Now, when messaging is shifting that quickly, like, what are you making of this? Because Iran's come out and said, we're not budging. The United States is saying we have productive talks underway. Where are you landing on what's really happening right now?
Yeah, I'm going to be perfectly clear. There is no evidence whatsoever that any productive talks are happening or have been happening. And the best example to give about the context of any conversations around peace is the fact that prior to these attacks starting on February 28th, Britain and Iran had reached an agreement about what to do with the enriched uranium that Iran had. And then within 24 hours, the US struck. There is no semblance of peace talks when any moment or opportunity that has presented itself that Iran has in the past said, yes, we will have discussions and we will talk, to only be followed by bombs from either Israel or the US. There's no peace talks happening. Everything is posturing by Trump right now. And that's all it is.
And what are you making of how the markets are reacting right now? Because it's been a wild morning. I mean, we saw, I think, what was it? A couple of the Asian indexes fell like 5 and 6% last night before trading started this morning. We've seen oil went down, I think, a couple percentage points as soon as Trump came out this morning and talked about it. Like, what are you making of it? Because this morning I checked too. I was looking on the stocks and we were in the red like $600. Next thing I checked, we're back up now after Trump made. Like, are we just responding to messaging from Trump that, let's be real, might be very unfounded based on what I'm hearing from you?
Well, let's not also forget the fact that last night we had gold futures absolutely crater. And over the course of the last 3 weeks, we've seen the 10-year yield start to approach a level that Trump is not comfortable with at all. The last time, right now, we're sitting at about 4.45%. Last time we reached 4.6 in April of 25, Trump put a 90-day pause on tariffs. And for everything that he says or does, the only thing that dictates his decision making ultimately is the quote unquote health of the economy that he measures by the stock market. Right. So every decision, everything he does or says publicly is posturing to ensure that going in for the next 9 months leading up to this midterm, the quote unquote economy looks good. That's what I'm taking as far as anything he says or does and the reactions by the markets. But it's also a promising sign because the markets are essentially sending a signal that, hey, Trump, you're messing up and you're messing up real bad and we don't accept these terms. And he's listening. He's listening to the markets.
Yeah. We can't say, hey, there's a war in Iran, but hey, the Dow is at $50,000. Those dreams have been broken now for a little bit. And, that was fun for a second, but now we're really getting the nuts and bolts and things. And we're seeing this conflict now kind of start to involve countries that aren't even directly involved. I mean, we're seeing places like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. They're starting to kind of prepare for what it seems like they think will be a longer conflict because I'm hearing that they're rationing fuel, they're shortening work weeks, they're doing things to conserve energy, which feels like a pretty big escalation and real world impact. So what do you make of that, seeing that these other countries that aren't directly involved seem to be preparing themselves for a much longer conflict? Is that a big signal to you right now and where we actually are?
Absolutely. And I think the key tell here is this. While we have to sit here in the US and discern, is Trump saying fact or fiction? What is the posturing around it? Iran is very direct with what they're doing. They have already come out and said, we have the resources for the next year. We are ready to let this drag out. When they went and sent bombs to Israel, what did they do? They texted the Israeli citizens telling them, your government is lying to you. It is not safe. Get out and seek shelter and safety. They have done this to their very enemies. They are warning them, hey, you want conflict? Okay, we're in conflict. Prepare accordingly. It's not even just the other Middle Eastern countries. Look at Japan. The signs out of Japan where gas stations are saying, it's not even that gas is expensive. They don't have gas anymore. Korea is the same way. We're starting to see the rest of the world is going to be heavily, heavily impacted. And the truth of the matter is this: wealthier countries will be able to afford and last during a prolonged war. Poorer countries like Sri Lanka, like Pakistan, unfortunately, can't weather that storm unless they plan for it accordingly. So that's, I think, a lot of the positioning and posturing we're seeing right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, and kind of going back to posturing, I'd love to get your take on this. So, you know, we're seeing Trump say, "Hey, things are looking like they're close to wrapping up," and you and I both see that as likely, based on the other evidence, him kind of misrepresenting what's actually going right now, or posturing. With that being said, do you think there's any case to be made that the leadership out of Iran could be doing the same thing by saying they have no plans to stop, maybe in efforts to gain better leverage for some kind of back channel deal that Trump claims is actually going on? So might they be saying something publicly in order to gain leverage privately?
Potentially, yes, but I think there's a little bit of context that we in the West are continue to ignore.
Yeah.
What we have done to a Shia Muslim led country that has been waiting 1400 years for a martyr, we gave them that martyr. We have essentially unlocked for them what they view as the end of times. They are willing to die for their cause, for their faith, and for their beliefs. Whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant. I am no fan of the Iranian regime. The mullahs have ruined my family's life and kept us separated for decades now. Ultimately, what we have done, though, is we have given them and emboldened them to say, well, if you're just going to kill us, then we're going to try to take everything and everyone out with us along the way until one of us is successful. So while there is some posturing being done by the Iranian regime in what they say and what they do, I don't think it's a bluff. You know, when we sit at a poker table, you know, sometimes you have the cards, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want to act like you don't, even though you have the cards. I think we're seeing a moment where they're going all in and they're saying, feel free to call us, but you're going to lose either way.
That's scary to me. Like, because you talked about them looking for a martyr, and they kind of got one. And I assume you're talking about the Ayatollah Khamenei, who was killed in the strikes, and now his son is in his place. So, with that being said, do you think there's a possibility that, like, specifically the West and America isn't factoring in that, like, that this is really a bigger thing than, like, to us, this is about energy production and allegedly nuclear weapons and Israel and all that stuff. But for them, is this like, it's almost like it sounds like a religious thing. Like, that makes me think they're going to fight to the death for this.
This is a war for survival because the way the Iranian leadership is looking at this is, if they lose, their way of life is going to be taken from them. That is, you are literally putting someone in a corner who has the weaponry and ability to do so, fight back and fight hard. And the other side of this too, that even, let's say Trump does back out. Let's say the U.S. does stop dropping bombs. We watched what happened last year. And I think there's something really, really important that maybe went over some people's head. For the first time ever, Trump publicly dropped the F-bomb after the peace was negotiated in the 12-day war, and then Israel still went and bombed Iran. On public cameras, for the first time ever, Trump used the F word. That's how pissed off he was. And the truth is this: Trump came out, what was it, this morning, and said, we're starting to find peace talks, we're easing up. Israel's response was to drop more bombs on Iran. So even if we back out of this, we being the United States, this conflict is going to continue for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. Unless,
go ahead.
Unless Iran gets what they've been asking for, which is a release of sanctions, a release of economic reprieve, and frankly, going forward, they now understand that, you know what? The entire world does rely on us. We've been the nice guy. We've let you use the Strait of Hormuz for free this entire time. And people are pissed about, well, we need to unlock it. Well, it was unlocked before this. Let us not forget. And now you will have to pay to use it forever.
Yeah, man. So what do you think ultimately could be, in your mind, what could a potential resolution like? Are we paying reparations for all the damage that's been done in Iran? And, like, also the United States funds like the majority, if not all, of Israel's military powers. So if we said, hey, we're stepping back, are we still supplying Israel with munitions? Like, I'm trying to figure out what a real de-escalation and compromise for this situation could look like right now. And I'm having a hard time figuring out what that could be. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, actually. And, you know, it starts with one simple thing: accountability. And the Iranian people have not been able to be given that sense of accountability as far back as 1979. And I want to unpack that statement, because What happened when the Shah was kicked out? The Iranian people, put to trial, and yes, they did hang those who they found guilty, members of the Shah's cabinet who were stealing from the Iranian people. They held trials for all of these people, with the exception of one person, the Shah himself. He was never held accountable. So we never saw Iranian leadership truly held accountable for crimes committed against the Iranians and stealing that wealth. Fast forward 47 years, and let's be perfectly honest, the mullahs have just done the exact same thing. They have just stolen from the Iranian people because there was no accountability ever held from the Shah's time, fast forwarded to today. The mullahs, however, are actually smart enough to realize that if we don't hold those who have aggressed against us accountable, what is to stop them from doing this again? It's exactly why we did the Nuremberg trials after World War II. We held those Nazi generals accountable to prevent anything like this from ever happening in the future. And unless something is done on a public stage on the UN floor, where people who committed atrocious war crimes, like bombing hospitals, harming civilians, hurting infrastructure on both sides, need to be held accountable, just because we say there's peace, that doesn't mean we will have peace forever. And unfortunately, that is a step that, frankly, a lot of government officials think is too far, because they know that if that happens, God knows if they're going to live for much longer after that.
Man, Q, you're speaking truth. I got to get you in the cabinet, man. Finally, somebody with some like real ideas that I could see actually playing out, because I don't like where things are headed right now. And I'll be honest, I could talk with you about this all hour, but I'm being told we need to move on because there are other news stories we got to cover here. But we're going to have you back, I'm sure, for more about this, because you're always bringing the heat, and we certainly appreciate your insights. But moving on to our next story, we're talking about U.S. lawmakers as they're trying to regulate a technology that seems to evolve faster than they can schedule a hearing. The White House has rolled out a 4-page AI framework that is remarkably direct about what it wants. Congress should take control, and everyone else, especially the states, should step aside. Now, the plan pushes for a single national approach that would override state-level AI laws. And if you look closely, the philosophy here is pretty clear. Keep regulation centralized, keep it light, and don't create new obstacles for the companies building this technology. Now, there's no proposal for a new regulatory agency, no broad liability for AI developers if their tools are misused by someone else, and even a suggestion that companies should be allowed to experiment in regulatory sandboxes, which is a polished way of saying fewer rules, fewer consequences, and faster iteration. Now, when it comes to copyright, which is arguably the biggest legal fight in AI right now, the administration takes a very firm stance and then stops short of doing anything legislative about it. The framework explicitly says that training AI models on copyrighted material does not violate copyright law, which is exactly the position major AI companies are defending in court. But instead of asking Congress to lock that into law, the White House is essentially saying, let the courts handle it, while floating the idea of a future licensing system that lawmakers are specifically told not to define or mandate. So in practice, you're supporting the industry's argument while avoiding a vote that anyone would have to explain to voters later. The workforce section is also interesting for what it includes and what it doesn't. There's talk about training programs and preparing workers for the future, but there's no real acknowledgement of the layoffs already happening as companies restructure around AI. Firms like Block, Crypto.com, and Messari have all cut staff tied to AI-driven changes, while companies building AI, like OpenAI, are hiring aggressively and planning to nearly double their workforce. So the pattern that's quietly forming here is that the winners of the shift are expanding, and the people being displaced aren't really addressed in this framework. Now, unsurprisingly, the AI industry responded very positively, with major players like Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Anthropic, and OpenAI backing the approach, especially the parts that limit regulation and liability. House Republicans also quickly endorsed it, which gives you a sense of how this might start to move politically. Now, none of this becomes reality unless Congress actually passes it, and doing something this sweeping in an election cycle is a heavy lift, especially since similar attempts to centralize AI regulation have already failed more than once. All right, we're bringing Q back. Q, I want to talk about this one with you. The White House framework is basically saying, we don't want a patchwork of state level AI laws. We want one centralized federal approach. When you look at that, does that feel like a move toward clarity and efficiency to you, or does it maybe concentrate risk in a way that people might not be thinking about just yet? I'd love to get what your initial thoughts on this are.
Yeah, I have two initial thoughts. First, on the idea that the federal government does not want states to have sovereignty over making these decisions is the antithesis of why they overturned Roe v. Wade. So the hypocrisy there just makes me laugh. On the other side of it, too, this is a classic tactic used by large industries. When they get large enough, they create what's called regulatory moats. That's why you have Sam Altman working with Congress saying, you're right, everything I did is bad. But let me keep doing it and let's make laws so it makes it really, really hard so anyone else could ever catch up to me. It's exactly what Microsoft and Bill Gates did. It's exactly what Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook did. It goes as far back, and I highly recommend to your audience, if they can get their hands on this book, The Invisible Billionaire. It's about Daniel K. Ludwig. He's a shipping titan, and he did the exact same thing. Once he got too big, he lobbied Congress. Congress was like, hey, you're a little too big. This might be a little bit of a monopoly. You're right. Let me help you write the laws, though, but I'm going to make exceptions for myself and my business because I'm already here and I'm already doing it. But let's not let any competition catch up to me. And so we create these regulatory modes, and that's what we're witnessing right now.
Yeah. So it's like, they're like, hey, let's put these laws in place, but we're already maybe like, are they almost asking to kind of grandfather themselves into things that have already been done so that future players can't do it? Is that what's basically happening
None
here?
of this is going to affect Anthropic. It's not going to affect Google Gemini. It's not going to affect ChatGPT. All of these existing AI protocols that have been built out to the levels that they have, they will be granted all the exceptions that they need to continue to operate at the levels that they do. While if you or I decide, hey, let's just vibe code and build something out, there will be so many restrictions put on us based on these laws that'll get placed. So it's backwards. It is the antithesis of what our founding fathers wanted to see industries do, but it's a very common practice that we've seen, especially over the course of the last 100 years.
Yeah, no, well put. And another thing I want to kind of talk about here that I know has been a big hot button issue in the AI space is kind of the approach to copyright, right? Because right now, with the administration is clearly seemingly siding with AI companies in principle, but then they're saying the courts should just figure it out instead of Congress. How do you interpret that kind of hands-off, but not really hands-off stance right now? Any thoughts on that one?
It kind of is trying to leave a little bit of wiggle room to say like, well, we didn't make the mistake if there are mistakes being made. The truth of the matter is this: every single example we have, from copyright to fraud or any illegal activity that quote unquote people are afraid that AI is going to do, there are already laws in place for that. We don't need to over-regulate ourselves and create new laws and regulations. If I were to take the latest Disney movie and post it on my Instagram or YouTube channel, I would get in trouble for that. That is copyright infringement. That law already exists.
Yeah.
So for you to take, I don't know, the latest Star Wars TV series or movie, throw it into an AI program and say, create this, and then I'm going to monetize and make more money off of this based on someone else's work, that is inherently illegal. The laws already exist for that. We don't need to create new laws, but we're trying to for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a good point. Yeah, I mean, if they're able, like you said, like, hey, that applies to everyone else, but we've already been doing it. So it's like you can't really unpack that one. You can't put that toothpaste back in the thing. So you make it. That's really interesting points. I appreciate you sharing with those with us, Q. And the workforce piece of this story is also kind of interesting because there's been a lot of talk about training and preparing workers, but not much acknowledgement of all the layoffs we're seeing happening. Block, I think Meta just laid off like 20% of their staff because of AI stuff. How do you think people should be thinking about that disconnect between policy and reality? Are they just like saying that to kind of assuage maybe a lot of the fears in of people who are already working in that space? Meanwhile, they're just cutting jobs. So it sounds like we're getting, there's a certain narrative here, but then we're also seeing them cut the jobs rather than train new employees. Like, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a natural byproduct of technology. What was it? 100 years ago, the number one type of job or work field was working in agriculture. That has since largely shifted, but in that moment when technology was introduced to agriculture, there were massive layoffs. We did see a decline in the workforce that took some time for people to understand, well, actually, we still need ag workers. They still need to understand this technology. And then new industries formed around it. We're in that uncomfortable period, sadly. And I think some of the layoffs are valid. Some of them are maybe just companies trying to boost their stock price heading into earnings reports. I think there's a little bit of a mix of both of these things. But ultimately, those who adopt the new technology as fast as possible, they will be able to lead the charge when the next bull market goes. That is the natural cyclical nature of markets and the economy in general.
Yeah. And you know, AI, though, with that being said, we've had new techs before, and we know those get rid of some jobs and they get replaced with new ones. But we're literally building a technology that, in theory, could do most jobs, just maybe not the physical ones yet. Where do you think we're headed with this right now? If you were working in tech and you're seeing these layoffs, are you getting legitimately concerned right now? Because like I have friends who are in like UX and UI design, and they're like telling me we maybe got 5 years left. Do you think that's true with at the current trajectory we're seeing AI kind of replace a lot of people's jobs right now?
Yes and no. I think to an extent we went through a period of overhiring, especially after COVID, and
True.
we've seen periodic moments of layoffs, and I have frankly felt this year was going to be a big layoff year. I myself was the victim of a layoff earlier this year, and this is part of what's going to happen. But then of those employees who are left, what's going to happen is yes, they're going to be given more work naturally, but then by being able to capitalize and use these AI tools, your output will also increase as a result, and you will just be able to do more work.
Hmm.
I think the thing that I find most interesting is a lot of these like professional industries, like doctors and lawyers, where WebMD is a great example of like everyone thinks they're a doctor. You're not. Let me tell you, I have a chat GPT conversation that I call Dr. GPT, and it's just like my go-to nurse. I just bounce off like, hey, I'm feeling like this. I want to take this. What are other options? Things like that. Lawyers are great
Hmm.
examples of like, dude, why do we want to pay $500 plus per hour of billing when genuinely everything is written online, and you
Yeah.
can you can create a specific lawyer bot that is just focused on that. And I think like if I was able to properly build a uh, neural network the way these GPT models are being built, partner with one of these professionals who can like really make sure that you're training the model well enough, and then you're going to see things like that pop up. You're going to see a purely like I hate just saying chat GPT or Anthropic or things like that, but like you're going to see a
Right.
version of one of these chatbots that is so specific now just because, hey, I just need a lawyer. And there are going to be businesses that come up like that. And that's a natural progression of technology. And you will
Yeah.
also then see when these new businesses come up, they're going to need sales reps. They're going to need marketing people. They're going to need internal teams to operate and make sure that the business grows and maintains and runs properly. That
Hmm.
that is just what it's going to take time to get there, sadly, and it's going to take some very ambitious people to just take that leap themselves rather than wait for those businesses to come up.
Yeah, and I'll be fair though. I think we'd all be okay with there being a few less lawyers around. I'm fine
100%.
with the Chat GPTs
100%.
doing that for me. I mean, they're pretty good at it already. And I'm interested too about like the medical side. Like, I feel like there might be a future where like you don't go to the doctor, you just go to like a medical box. It scans everything, finds out what's wrong with you. You know, little poke prod here and there, and that I mean, probably still a far ways away. We're not quite in
Oh,
Jetsons
it's
territory yet.
actually no, 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 no. We are knocking on that door. It's the
Are we?
founders of Spotify. Actually, they were doing this in Sweden. They just launched exactly what you described. You go in, it's a full body scan, and based on the scan, no needles, nothing. They are able to. It's not preventative. It's preemptive. They want people to go this as a
Right.
checkup, and they found people with aneurysms that haven't spiked yet. They found
Wow.
early cases of cancer. It just launched in New York. The wait list is about 10,000 people, but it's here. Like these things are
Wow.
happening in real time, and it's incredible. We are literally witnessing, to your point, the Jetsons reality coming to life in our everyday.
Man, it's a crazy time to be alive, and I'm so glad we got people like you, Q, to help me make sense of it all, because it is a wild world out there, and we need all the info we can get. You and I are going to take a quick break, though, Q, but when we're back, we've got more of today's top news stories to talk about. So everyone at home, stay tuned. Q and I will be back with more right after this quick break. Welcome back to RoxomTV News. Our next story is taking us over to Cuba, where the country recently experienced something closer to a full shutdown than a simple blackout. You see, the entire power grid went down again on Saturday, marking the third nationwide outage in March. And at this point, it's starting to feel less like a rare crisis and more like a reoccurring feature. You see, the immediate issue is that Cuba has been without Venezuelan oil for over 2 months now, which means there's simply no fuel to generate electricity across the island. Hospitals are relying on backup generators when they can, while the entire regions are left without consistent power for extended stretches of time. The Cuban government is pointing to U.S. sanctions as the main cause for this, which is partly true, but the underlying system has been deteriorating for years due to aging infrastructure and lack of investment. Trump has even talked about liberating Cuba. Let's take a look.
But I think Cuba's seen the end. You know, all my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it.
Free it, take it. You can do anything you want with it. Just put it in his pocket. Now, what's actually happening now is really the result of both pressures colliding at once. You see, and what this shows more broadly is how fragile a country can become when its energy system depends heavily on one external source. Because once that supply disappears, the margin for error disappears with it. Moving on, a case is unfolding that feels a lot bigger than the individuals involved, as two teenagers are now in federal custody after allegedly throwing improvised explosive devices at a protest outside Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home earlier this month. Now, after being arrested, one of the suspects reportedly asked for a pen and paper and wrote out a pledge of allegiance to ISIS, then told investigators he wanted to carry out an attack larger than the Boston Marathon bombing. The second suspect told authorities he had been consuming ISIS propaganda on his phone and considered himself affiliated with the group despite having no prior criminal record. Investigators later found additional explosives stored in Bucks County, which suggests there was more planning behind this than just a single incident. And it also comes just days after a separate ISIS-inspired shooting at Old Dominion University, putting two similar cases on the radar in a very short period of time. And what stands out here is not only the incidents themselves, but how quickly exposure to extremist content online can escalate into real-world action, even among people who previously showed no obvious warning signs. A federal jury has ruled that Elon Musk deliberately pushed down Twitter's stock price back in 2022 when he tweeted that his $44 billion deal was temporarily on hold over bot concerns, which plaintiffs argue was less about spam accounts and more about getting a better price. Now, the jury didn't go all the way on the conspiracy claims, but they did find Musk liable on 2 fraud counts, with damages expected to land around $2.5 billion, a number that sounds massive until you remember who we're talking about here. Now, Musk says he plans to appeal, so this is likely heading into a longer legal fight. Still, a jury of 9 people recently looked at one of the most powerful figures in tech and said, yeah, that crossed the line, which is not something you hear very often. And the real takeaway is that even in a world where markets can move at the speed of a tweet, there may finally be some limits on who gets to move them and how. A Nevada state judge has just temporarily banned prediction market platform Kalshi from operating, ruling that its contracts on sports, elections, and entertainment qualify as illegal gambling under state law. Now, the court found that Kalshi's event contracts meet the definition of a sports pool, which requires a state-issued license, something that the company does not have. And this is not exactly an isolated issue. You see, Nevada is now the 3rd state in less than 2 weeks to take action against Kalshi, with Arizona filing 20 criminal misdemeanor charges earlier this week, and Massachusetts previously banning the company's sports-related contracts before that decision was later lifted on appeal. Kalshi has also preemptively sued Iowa, expecting similar enforcement there, meaning the company is now fighting legal battles across multiple states at the same time. And at the center of all this is Kalshi's core argument. The company says it operates as a federally regulated designated contract market under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or CFTC, and that this federal oversight should override state gambling laws. The CFTC itself has publicly supported that position, backing prediction markets in their disputes with state regulators, but the courts have not agreed. A federal appeals court recently denied Kalshi's emergency request to pause proceedings, clearing the way for Nevada regulators to move forward. And the location, it matters here. You see, if Kalshi cannot convince a Nevada court, arguably the most experienced jurisdiction in the country when it comes to gambling, that its contracts are not gambling, that argument becomes significantly harder to win anywhere else. All right, joining me to talk about this story, I'm bringing Q. Q, for people who aren't deep in this space. Kalshi itself represents a federally regulated, or Kalshi presents itself as a federally regulated prediction market, but states are treating it like illegal gambling. How do you feel about this? How do you explain that disconnect in a way that makes sense? I'd love to get your thoughts on these because these prediction markets don't seem to be going away anytime soon.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about this as you were bringing up Nevada because Nevada is interesting an interesting case because this is the gambling hub. This is where Las Vegas is born and bred.
Yeah.
For the longest time, this was the only place if you wanted to make a bet you had to go to. Now, why is that important? Well, earlier we were just talking about regulatory moats. We have watched over the course of the last 6 or 7 years, DraftKings, FanDuel, all these other companies go through every single step to become legally certified, lobby, make sure states are passing the right legislation. They did all the quote unquote right things that we deem to be right or wrong to become credited, or whatever the terminology actually is, to be a licensed entity in that state to operate and do business. Kalshi just kind of was like, we're here, we can do this. And it's rubbing the people who make those decisions the wrong way, quite honestly. It has not really impacted their bottom line. It's not impacting their user base. People don't care that it's quote unquote not necessarily kosher or legal to use it. Ultimately, they just want to go to where they can make the wagers and bets that they want to. And if Kalshi is the one that's allowing them to do it, the people will go and use it up until it's fully outlawed and banned.
Yeah, yeah. And, this situation is, I'd say, especially interesting because, or maybe even confusing, because it seems like the CFTC is backing Kalshi while the states are filing criminal charges and banning it. So my question for you, Q, is how unusual is it to see that kind of direct conflict between federal and state regulators? It's an interesting situation here.
I'm going to talk out of my ass for a little bit. And I'm gonna do a little bit of research so that next time we talk, I can back this claim up. But the incentive models of those two groups would lead me to believe that the CFTC, those are not elected offices. Those are people who are ultimately, they're either hired or assigned based on the elected officials. The elected officials, on the other hand, they tend to get money donated to them. They also have lobbyists in their back pockets or in their ears whispering, telling them what to do and not do. And you're telling me that the lobbyists for places like DraftKings or FanDuel maybe are a little bit upset that their market reach is diminishing because of a place like Kalshi, and they're not calling up the same people who got them hooked up with their licenses in different states and saying, hey, this is a bad thing. I need you to step on this a little bit to make it harder for them. Versus the people that they can't influence, like the CFTC, are like, they're fine. Like, we've already passed the laws that said that we're okay with people doing this. So why are we having this discussion or argument? Again, I've done zero research on this claim. This is just the human psychology and incentive model that we've built into our own political mechanisms.
Yeah, and it sounds not too dissimilar from what we were talking about with AI regular. You have these people that are already in it saying hey, we should really make some rules around this. And if it just so happens to prevent that moat from other competitors being able to join the space in the future, sounds good to us. So that's super interesting. And I'll be curious to get your take when you've officially done some more due diligence on this, because these prediction markets are wild. And I got one more question on them before we move on to our next story here, Q, because when you look at these prediction markets, from a data perspective, they're often framed as these tools for aggregating information and forecasting outcomes, and they can be really helpful that way. So my question for you is, do you think regulators are missing that angle at all, and maybe they're focusing too narrowly on the gambling aspect, or should they be focusing that narrowly on the gambling aspect? I don't know. Where do you land on that?
So I actually think regulators are smarter than we like to give them credit for. And the way they're articulating it publicly is the gambling, because that's the easiest thing to understand about what's happening. But I think regulators are very, very uncomfortable with what's happening. We've had this conversation a few times now around the fact that because this is this weird gray area of, we're not formally betting and saying 5-1 odds that Iran strikes here or there, but insiders are able to make certain picks that are coming to fruition, it's a very dangerous game that we're playing. And I think regulators want to get a little bit of clarity of what they are comfortable with and what they want to outright say, like, hey, this is not okay. We should not allow people who are in these closed door confidential meetings to be able to turn around and profit on the information. Because, like I said this before and I'll say it again, man, if I had the insider information on any of the bets going on Kalshi, you best believe I'm going and making one of those bets. That's the dream. Turn one Bitcoin into two overnight because you have the insider information that someone else does it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a complicated thing, man. And I don't know. It's funny because they're focusing on the gambling, and I think about like the sports gambling and stuff. And I know regulators seem to have a problem with that. But for me, the real issue is like potential insider trading and what that signals to other people or other countries. If somebody in the United States government says, hey, we're going to bomb Iran tomorrow, and then all of a sudden Iran's looking at it, like it's just ripe for misinformation and incentivization of the wrong kind that could really be damaging to people in the community and the world at large. So I don't know what to make of it. I think they're fun, but I just don't know long term, like how do you even build a legal framework to sort this out? Because I kind of feel like if it's either all or nothing with these, you're either going to allow everybody to gamble on sports and everything else, or you realize that these are just problematic all the way across the board. I mean, do you see a real opportunity where we could find a kind of middle ground framework that maybe doesn't have some of these potential dangers that I speak of? Because I just don't know how this is going to work.
I think the dangers you speak of are the big issue that needs to be solved. But at the same time, too, what these prediction markets are doing they're breaking traditional, industries. The best example is all of the election sort of polling stuff out the door. None of the polls ever since 2016, we have learned the polling mechanisms are faulty and failed. But Polymarket is a better indicator of the general sentiment in polling. Now, whether that is going to be what these things become known for and what they do, I think there's a huge business opportunity for companies like Kalshi and Polymarket to really cement themselves in these type of areas. While at the same time, if you're going to start to have conversations and allow people to make predictions and bets on elections, you should also allow them to make predictions, bets on policy decisions. And then at that point, it's like, well, how do you prevent this? And the truth of the matter is, we haven't even figured it out in the regulated markets. When you have Nancy Pelosi turning into a billionaire or other members of Congress just continuously making bets either through them, their spouses, or others, we haven't even figured it out in the actual frameworks of where we do regulate this. And to say like, oh, well, we also need to figure out in this unregulated market. Let's figure out the regulated markets first, because I'm pretty sure once those laws are in place, we can just apply them here. But we don't want to talk about that, do we?
Yeah, that's a good point. It kind of feels like same problem, but just different platforms. Because like you said, Pelosi's been doing this well before prediction markets, and she's been making herself one of the wealthiest people in Congress. So you're right. This is there's already a precedent here. Why don't we just kind of rely on what those in the past and kind of make that fit in today's world?
And we need to make that precedent.
I guess I mean with like, okay, I see what you're saying. Like they need to make sure Pelosi can't be doing that in the first place.
100%. 100%.
Right.
Both sides of the aisle. Let me be perfectly clear. I think both sides of the aisle are idiots, but they're both doing it. So we need to end the ability for members of Congress to trade in public markets.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's like, like they're part of, the government or whatever, but human nature is the same regardless of your position. And are people going to try to profit from having knowledge other people don't? Yes, that's what we do. We're humans. It doesn't mean we're bad. It just means we're incentivized, right? So, all right, I want to move on. I got another story, and this is a fun one to close this out today. So hang 10, Q. I'll bring you back in a second, because Mark Zuckerberg is reportedly building a personal AI agent to help him run Meta, and not in a vague AI will assist leadership kind of way. We're talking about a tool that's being designed to pull the information he would normally get through layers of employees, essentially compressing the management chain between the CEO and the data he needs to make decisions. So instead of asking 5 people and waiting for a deck, you ask the machine and you get an answer, which if you zoom out is probably one of the most honest versions yet of what tech companies have been saying all along. AI isn't only helping people do their jobs, it's replacing the steps between them. So I want to bring Q back. Q, Zuck is building a personal AI agent to bypass layers of management and go straight to the information he needs feels like a very little version of what AI is supposed to do. When you saw that, what stood out to you most about how companies might actually start operating? And what were your initial thoughts on Zuck essentially creating an AI to be his go-to guy and not have to talk to all the other people at Facebook?
I mean, if anyone was going to do it, it was always going to be Zuck. And there's always been
Yeah.
this joke since the AI chatbots have started to really cement themselves as part of business that eventually one of these CEOs is just going to be replaced by an AI chatbot and it will make the decisions. I think there's a little bit of human nuance and we are flawed. Human beings are naturally flawed. And I think where we are flawed gives way for incredible opportunities. And the truth of the
Yeah.
matter is, we haven't seen AI create anything as remotely beautiful as, what we see in the arts. It makes some really cool stuff. And mind you, I love,
Yeah.
some of the Star Wars AI alternative videos that have been coming out. They're great. But the truth is, we haven't been able to see AI create from start to finish a story as captivating as Star Wars or a business as instrumental to everyday life as we see it now as Amazon. That is still the construct of human creativity and ingenuity. And I think that it, unless AI figures that or we are able to put that into AI, there will always be space and room for humans to be creative because
Yeah.
that's what makes life beautiful.
Right. And it's like, I don't think we've seen yet kind of like the moment of conception for like an AI idea, right? Because it's all these LLMs are all based off of things that are already created from humans. And we're able to think of nothing and then turn it into something when AI is relying off of things we've already done. So I'll be curious to see if we're able to kind of find out a way to create that spark within the algorithms. But I wouldn't put it past them at this point. I'm already amazed at what they're able to do, even at the pace we're at now. But it does bring up a bigger question here too, because like if a company of nearly 80,000 people is trying to operate with the efficiency of an AI native startup, but with a fraction of the size of like a Meta, what does that tell you about where productivity is headed and what that might mean for headcount over time? Because this is just another signal to me that more and more jobs are going to be getting replaced by AI. If you don't need the intermediaries telling Zuckerberg what's going on in his company. It starts to be like they're another part of their job is being automated right now, and I think that's kind of scary.
I mean, look, middle management has always been sort of a joke in as far as corporate America is concerned, in my opinion, at least. It's an extra layer of steps, a bigger salary for zero work output, and I think that idea of zero work output has been challenged, especially for the last few years. The best example, most recently, is Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter, where
Right.
they completely trimmed all of the fat and Twitter didn't stop working. Look, there were some bumps in the road while he figured out who actually was the fat and not. But ultimately, we are starting to see that shift of we've kind of over bloated a lot of these businesses, especially within the context of corporate America. And a lot of people are just collecting paychecks because they can
Right.
without actually adding to a company's GDP, which is the way I
True.
think more companies need to kind of think and operate under is what are you adding to the growth of either the business from a position of revenue? That is what business is in a nutshell is how do I maximize every dollar coming in and turn it into however much more? Um,
Right.
so
No, it makes sense. It's all about, efficiency and maximizing the tech and the time and the people and the resources that you have. And I mean, I'll be real, Q. That's why we bring you on the show, my friend, because we want to maximize the amount of good news and conversations we have here at Roxom TV. So I really want to thank you, as always, for your time. It's always an absolute treat when you and I get to jam. You are always doing some amazing work out there. And I'm sure, as always, you've gained at least a couple of new followers in our audience this morning that are like, hey, I like the cut of Q's jib. I need to learn more about what he's up to. So with that being said, if we've got more people in our audience that haven't had enough of their daily vitamin Q, what's the best place I can send them to get more?
please give me a follow on Twitter, Q underscore like the letter. And I'll just sign off saying this. Even if you don't agree with me, give me a follow, shoot me a DM. Like I love talking to people I don't agree with as much as I like talking to people who I do. We need to break our own echo chambers. So even if you think everything I said is completely off base and that I'm crazy, like DM me or screw it. Talk to me on a public channel. I don't care. I will always talk to anyone, regardless of whether we agree or not. And I think that's a nuance that we've sadly lost in our society that needs to come back.
Those are wise words, Q. We need more civil public discourse. That's the only way we can ever, make this world better is by talking things out, not making, not unlike what we're seeing right now in the government and a lot of other places. So you're doing God's work out there, Q. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a treat, and we can't wait to have you back again real soon, my friend. I hope you have a great week.
Thank you, as always, for having me, Hank, and the team. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure's all ours. Thanks so much, Q. All right, gang. Well, that is a wrap for our virtual edition here at RoxomTV News. I'm traveling today, but I'll be back in the studio tomorrow, and I can't wait to bring you more of the day's top news stories, so I'm excited for that. If you haven't already done the thing, now's a great time. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to RoxomTV, RoxomTV News, me at Hank at RoxomTV, and also make sure to follow Q and Big Beat and all the amazing guests and Obi that we had on the show today. There is such a wealth of information and knowledge there. You are going to want to stay tuned into what they are up to. So in the meantime, we'll be back tomorrow at our normal time of 8 a.m. PST. We'll be back in our San Francisco studio, so I can't wait. And in the meantime, I want you all out there to stay safe, stay informed, and I will see you boys and girls tomorrow. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.